and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the late match reaction from yesterday's game in Zagreb, where I was there, of course. There was no match reaction last night. Let me just get some housekeeping done and out the way very, very quickly, shall I? So there was no post-match reaction. Why? I went straight to my bastard in bed. Wasn't out steaming, drinking, whatever. I went and got a Chinese and went to my bed. Why? Because my flight was at 6:30 this morning, which is 5:30 back here. We never got in until 11:30 after the game, so that gave me a grand total of about 3 hours sleep. I am running on fumes. The bags under my eyes are no lie. I am running on 3 hours good sleep and a couple of hours of broken sleep on flights. I've been on how many flights today? 2 flights today. I was done the Zagreb to Frankfurt to Glasgow. I'm shattered, absolutely knackered, and that's why I decided we'd go live tonight on the channel. Because I don't know, I'd rather a conversation about the game, because it's going to be interesting to hear some of your perspective on it. Because for me, it was a boring game, of course. I think we're all in sort of agreement with that. It was a really bad game of football. But I think even more so for people who were there, and if you were there and you're watching this, you'll probably agree, it was such a hard game to read because the stadium is terrible. It's awful. I have never been further away from a game of football in my life, so it made it really, really difficult to judge the game to the same way that I usually would. And of course, I will put my hand in the air and honestly say I had a few pints as well, which probably had a play on my judgment. But you know, it was a very poor game of football. Simple as that, and we've got a lot to cover about it. I think that this is one that's got a lot of discourse about it online, a lot of people being very negative, and a lot of people trying to look at it kind of glass half full and saying, you know, well, we still went away from home in Europe and got a point, which is still good. But when you consider the fact that they were not a great team, I think that I look at it once again as another missed opportunity. I feel similar, maybe not as hard done by, I would say. I don't know, I feel similar to the Bruges game, but I think I was angrier at the Bruges game because it was at Celtic Park. And I tried to take a wee bit of solace in the fact that this was away from home and it was a difficult place to be on a really horrible night. But it did feel like another missed opportunity. In the grand scheme of things, a point is good, and keeping our unbeaten run at the minute in Europe is good. But you know, we've seen the heights of what we can do, and we've seen how we played away from home in Atalanta, where, of course, that was another 0-0, but it was a 0-0 against a side who should have and could have battered us. But this was a 0-0 against a side who were nowhere near the quality of Celtic going into the game. And on the night, we didn't get into our stride. We didn't hit any sort of momentum in the game. We were really lifeless, is the word that I would use. And the final third was just non-existent. So we've got a hell of a lot to cover, and I'm seeing a lot of comments flying in, and I will be trying my best to get to them. If you haven't already, though, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. We're about 40 subscribers away from 47,000, so let's please smash that before Christmas. That would be ideal. It's down below. It's absolutely free. And hello to everybody who's a channel member who is in right now. I've got a lot of things to talk about. Yeah, I see this from Chilpil here talking about urgency, and it was boring football. We couldn't string 2 passes together. It was very boring. There wasn't any urgency. It felt like we couldn't string a pass together. That was the main takeaway for me. And coming out of the back, you know, the defence was fine, and I think, you know, we could take the positives away from being like, okay, well, we kept a clean sheet defensively, we were good enough, and maybe you can maybe flip that round and go, well, obviously Zagreb were defensively good enough, they made life difficult for Celtic, but I don't think that we've done enough in the final third to even justify that conversation. You know, I don't think that Celtic done enough in the final third of the park to go, oh, well, Zagreb were just really good defensively. Of course they were good. They kept us out and they made it hard for us to put anything together up at that end of the pitch. But, you know, it was just so, I don't know, it was like we were missing something. It was like, you would think that we were the team that was missing so many first-team players. Now, we went into that hearing that Zagreb were missing 8 first-team players or what have you. And you'd think it was Celtic. It was like the heartbeat of the team was gone. And when you expect the big performances from players like, you know, Rio Hatate, who some would maybe consider the heartbeat of the team, or maybe even a Callum McGregor, although I thought Callum McGregor was probably one of our better players last night, if that's possible to say in terms of how nobody really stood out. You know, it just seemed like there was no heartbeat in the team. Nothing that was ambitious. Nicholas Kuhn, Dyson Maeda were both quiet. Kyogo, I didn't see involved in the game like whatsoever. So, you know, there was just something missing. And maybe Brendan Rodgers just went in with the wrong approach. I seen somebody saying, Nathan here, saying that he was maybe too safe. And I would tend to agree with that. I think that we did approach the game in too safe. And I think that that's maybe been a problem in the last couple of games, that we have been going into them after some great results thinking, let's not mess this up now. And we've maybe been a bit too reluctant to take the same risks that we did against Leipzig, the same risks that we did against Bratislava. I don't think we're trying as ambitious football. And maybe that is because we are so scared of squandering this great position we find ourselves in. It'd be great to be a fly in the wall of the dressing room and you know, hear the team talk going into the game and what Brendan Rodgers does want to play like. But you know, listen, the last thing I would say is concerning. You know, that's the last. I've seen a lot of people who were really not happy, to the point where they were, you know, saying it was a disaster, and it's not a disaster by any stretch. The thing that will irritate me the most now is the pressure that puts on the young boys game. That was a game that we should have been going into, win, lose or draw, still through to the next round. But now if you go at that, and listen, people are going, young boy. I heard some people coming out of the ground last night talking about, young boys will beat them anyway. Well, it's as easy as that. Is it as straightforward as that? Because Celtic have been in that position in Europe a million times before, and all it takes is a penalty, a stupid tackle, a red card, something going wrong for young boys to be a game that we leave with a disaster of a result. Celtic are more than possible of making that happen. I don't think it will happen. I just worry that we've left the door open for it. I'd have rather went into that game knowing that even if a disaster did happen, we were through. You know, that we had nothing to worry about going into that young boys game. And that result last night probably means that this game is win or bust for Celtic. A draw might be okay. But there's no guarantees in football, we know that, until it's mathematically set and done. You know, yeah, it's a hard way to read. I mean, I would agree with this. Like, listen, I find it hard to be overly negative, and I think people have been negative for the sake of being negative. I'm proud of what Celtic have done in Europe this season. I just think that these missed opportunities are ones that... And so the narrative will change, though. You know, this is ultimately the end conversation, I think, is going to be this. If we go through, people will go, it's fine, we're through anyway. But if we don't go through, we're going to talk about that game last night and the Bruges game in completely different ways. We're going to talk about them as disasters. If we go through, people will go, they were fine. So the narrative is yet to be written, is what I'd say. I think the narrative is yet to be written. It could go one of many ways. But a lot of negative conversations coming out of last night. A lot of people concerned with certain individuals. I see a lot of players being individually highlighted. Greg Taylor has been once again receiving it pretty stinking. Some folk on Twitter trying to spark the Arne Engels conversation. Listen, I don't think that last night is one of those games where you can blame a single player. I think that we were just as a unit poor. I think Cameron Carter-Vickers was probably our best outfield player. Schmeichel had another good game. I thought Trusty was fine as well. Johnson obviously had to go off injured at half time, so I'll take him out of the conversation. But, you know, outside of them, I don't think anybody done enough to you know, be individually singled out for a poor game. I think everybody was generally quite poor, but it seems like Taylor is taking the brunt of it again, which fair enough. If you want to use that, then that's fine. I don't think he's been good enough this season. I've not had away from that, but I don't think that he was any worse last night than a number of others on that park. And I know they all play in different positions, and you've got to analyse their games differently. But Kyogo once again was just gone. Nowhere in the game, and yes, I think that most of that comes down to the poor service, but at the same time, he just wasn't in the game, and you can only use poor service as an excuse for a striker's performance so much. I thought Kuhn was poor, and his decision making was poor. I thought Maeda just looked off it a little bit, very similar to the game against Bruges. I thought, where he just didn't look like the same player. And listen, at the end of the day, I think, not to be overly critical of certain players, but if you're trying to win a game in the Champions League The thing that you can't be doing as a football club is subbing on players like Tony Ralston. It's just he's not good enough for the level. He's not gonna do much. He had a poor game. He came on. I thought, listen, there is areas that need reinforcement, and you can't hide away from that fact. Now I know that we are limited to what we can do because we need so many. We need 4 club trained players. We need 4 nation trained players. So Ralston has to be there at the minute. But you're trying to win a game in Europe, and you've got Ralston on the right back, and you've got Taylor at left back. For some, it's just not anywhere near the standard required right now. So Celtic clearly have work to do. But there is positives. There definitely is positives as well. I think there's a night like that where, you would probably see Celtic do something stupid, and we didn't. So, we did keep ourselves calm. The composure was still there throughout the game. We didn't push ourselves too much. And maybe that does reflect in the overly safe approach to the game. But, and I've seen plenty of games like that where, we scored an own goal like we did against Bruges. We literally could have done that again, and we didn't do that. So, yeah, a strange game. Let's go through what you guys said. This is why I've done the stream. I wanted to talk to you. It was listen. Another thing I've got to say very quickly is the atmosphere was absolutely terrible. It's a shocker of a stadium. And I think I spoke to so many Celtic fans on the way home on the train, the tram, I should say, and we all said the same. I think each other. It was like a funeral. And I don't think that's any fault of the supporters either. Maybe the cold got to us. Maybe there was just no noise coming out because we were all freezing. But it didn't help that the stadium was so far away from or the stands were so far away from the park. They were all roofless. So you know what it's like in these kind of roofless stadiums where the sound just goes up and it's not hitting anything. So it's not, coming out anywhere. It's just going straight up in the air. It was a flat game. And it just reflected in the game itself. It is a stadium that, the stadium needs knocked down, and I can't believe that that's the National Stadium. I was stunned when I found out because it's a shithole, an absolute shit. Beautiful city. I really liked Zagreb, up there for one of the best away trips I've been on. I really did enjoy myself, and I loved the spots that we sat down to get a drink and stuff like that. But no, and it's nuts because that running track is like only goes round 3 stands. Like, where's the last quarter of the track? Where's that went? Confusing. Nonetheless, apparently that is the National Stadium. We looked it up, and it's where Scotland played Croatia most recently. So it's got to be the National Stadium. It's the biggest stadium in the country. It's like something out of the Soviet times. Like, it's proper. What do you call it again? What's that? Brutalist architecture. It's really... And I like some old-fashioned grounds. I don't like the overly modernised new stadiums. I like a bit of character, but this was like... This was one of those stadiums that, for me, was beyond being in a classic stadium with character, just to the point where it's shit, it's run down, and they need it to be redone. It's a country that got to the World Cup final. And it makes Hampden look like it's fucking the best stadium on the planet. Genuinely, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, let's get a few of your points. I've seen people talking about Rio Hatate, which is interesting because I did actually want to touch on Rio Hatate and his performances recently, because I very strongly agree with this kind of on and off of Rio Hatate at the minute. And I guess, a lot of people will say that's been him for the majority of his Celtic career. He has been a sort of on and off player, but he was poor. Didn't really offer us anything last night, and I don't think he's offered us much in the last couple of games, which, and listen, that's not me jumping to a certain narrative. I've been the one that's been on here saying he needs to start in European games. I think that he gives you, I said for Dortmund he has to start, for Atalanta he has to start, just because I think that he gives you that more ambitious style of play from the midfield. But that wasn't there last night. It was a really poor performance from him. I didn't see any of that Rio Hatate, that cutting edge, risky Rio Hatate. He was gone. He wasn't there, and that really frustrated me. Let's see. Let's go. Who's going to buy Hatate? No, well, see, this is... I think some people go too far with it, to be fair. Like, I don't think he's that bad, but he does have games where you're wondering, like... I will, to an extent, agree, Baldy Prick, because there's been a couple of games where I've went... has he flunked his good games? But he's a quality player. I don't know if it's an attitude thing. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to be one of those ones that suddenly start blaming it on the body language and all the rest of it. I'm not one of those guys. But there is something strange. There is something strange with Hatate, and it's always sort of been there. He will start on Sunday, and I prefer him over the empty shirt that is Engels. Well, that's strong words about Engels. Listen, Engels wasn't great when he came off the bench last night either. But I will be standing by Engels to the very minute I need to turn. The forced conversation around him at the minute is pointless, I think, because the only midfielder who's outperforming anyone is Luke McCowan at the minute. Luke McCowan's the only midfielder who I can safely say, well, do you know what? That's rude to Paulo Bernardo. In fact, let me just change all of this. I'm talking absolute shite. But between him and Hatate, both of them have been as bad as each other. Plus, Engels has not had a pre-season here. He's the youngest player in the squad. So much pressure on him. He's getting used to the game here. It's going to take time, and we need to be patient with him. It's as simple as that. So I'm not leaning into that whole narrative about Engels at the minute, and I refuse to. I'm not going to clickbait about it either. I'm not going to try and farm engagement around it, because I think that we should give the guy time. I think we should give the guy a chance, and I think that is naturally the only fair way to go about it at the minute. Until he has a full pre-season under his belt, I think that this is going to be a year of adapting for Arne Engels, and that's, maybe for some they don't have the patience for it, but yeah, it wasn't great when he came on. He didn't add anything when he came on the bench off the bench last night. DM Murray McDonald, hello, saying just an all-round stinking game, passed some players by, especially guys like Rio. Really need something a bit more in the middle, pace, height and power, not wanting to be overly critical though. Well, you're hoping that with development and with him getting more time and getting better, that's something that Arne Engels will have in his game as the finished article, that power. That's what Rodgers wanted in him. He wanted that power, he wanted the pace, he wanted the height of him, they wanted that physicality that Arne Engels supposedly had. Maybe we've not seen it in recent months, but I think it'll come. We won't spend all night talking about the will they, won't they of Arne Engels. I don't think there's too much of a point. By the way, over 160 live viewers. Thank you very, very, very much. Ryan, stop going to the away games in Europe. We might win one. Sorry, my bad. Listen, there's been people probably going for much longer than me, and they've yet to see the team win away from home. So in the Champions League. So don't worry. You've got to be part of a very exclusive club who were there for like Anderlecht. Or a couple of the other ones in recent years. We've not done it often. We have not done it often in the Champions League. Anyway, give Engels 6 months at least. People will be singing that. I think so. I think that everybody will be changing their tunes on Engels, and I hope they are. If he turns out to be rotten, he turns out to be rotten, and that's that. But I don't see the point in turning on the guy. People say the same about them. Next FM should hopefully be soon, and thank you, Kieran, for being a 2-month member on the channel. Thank you for the donation. Paradise Celt saying thoughts on bringing a new winger in, mate. I think it's a must. I think it's an absolute must. I think that if Celtic don't sign a winger in the January window, that it would be slightly negligent of us and slightly short-sighted. Not slightly, it would be very short-sighted. We don't have the required depth. I love and respect the hell out of James Forrest, but he's well beyond his best now. And I think that every Celtic fan would adhere to that. I'm not saying get rid of him or that he's not got a place anymore. No, I love Wade James, and I like him when he gets a chance and he comes on here and there. But we need to start thinking about life after Forrest. That's something we should have been thinking about 3-4 years ago. Let alone now. And in the left-hand side, when Dyson Maida's having a rotten game, and he has a couple of times in recent weeks, we have nobody to bring on. We have no other option to bring on to play over Dyson Maida. Luis Palma, who's probably off in January, isn't going to change the game for Celtic, I'm afraid. So we do need wingers, and I think we will probably try and sign at least one. So thank you for the donation. Thank you for the question. I do need to run a wee bit quicker than I like to. My dinner has just arrived. It is in my room as we speak, and I don't want it gone cold because that's why the stream was pushed back. I had an absolute disaster with the McDelivery. Freezing cold McDonald's at the door, inedible. Chicken selects, rock solid in the middle, they were that cold. So there was a whole palaver. I got a pizza instead, so that's down there waiting, and I don't want another cold dinner. I've been choking for food all day, so, get a spicy chicken pizza Wizard Motto for the chippy, because the chippy's reliable, unlike McDonald's, dirty bastards. Hopefully Ange does give Rangers a spank tomorrow. Listen, maybe I want to see Ida get more starts in the next few weeks. I think he deserves them. I think he's looked better. I don't think there's been much in it. I don't think that any of them have been particularly great this season. I'm not going to... I've seen somebody saying that I have an agenda against Kyogo, which is just absolutely unbelievable. I can't believe... I don't have an agenda against Kyogo. He's just been poor this season. I love the wee man, and I love his goal at the weekend was great. Fantastic goal. But he's just not been doing enough. For me, I think for his expectation levels, he's not delivering to them. It's not an agenda. I love him to fucking bits, and I want him to recover his best form. But for me, he's not doing too much at the minute. And I think that I would rather Ida gets a few starts in the next couple of weeks. Thank you, Stephen. I do appreciate it. Thank you, Alistair, for being a member for 2 months. It is much appreciated. When Ralston came on and got the yellow, I just about lost my head. Can't deal with him starting on Sunday. I know, I'm really needing to hear what Brendan Rodgers says about Joyce. It's a hip injury, isn't it? I really need Rodgers' comments now, like soon. Thomas, hello. He says, hi Ryan, I think a lot of fans are getting too confident with us missing an opportunity. We played quite poor and still came away with the point. I think it's a good result. Listen, I think it's one of those ones that splits opinion, and it's going to split opinion, because if you're glass half full or glass half empty, you're going to look at it in a certain way. My mate Mark, beside me to the left of me last night, was fine with a point. Disappointed with the performance, but he was a lot happier than what me and Kieran were. Kieran to my right was pretty angry. Not angry, that's unfair on Kieran. He was pretty annoyed. Mark wasn't as annoyed. I think that Celtic fans are going to look at it differently depending on who you speak to, and that was just a very small sample of the two guys I was with. One was more annoyed and one was more, it is what it is. So, I think Celtic have just set really high standards for themselves this year, and that's really it. Sam, Striptease members, I'll join. You've got it. You've got it, Sam. We will be there. We will be there. I've got to this cup tie as well. I'd love to have seen him start on Sunday, Anthony. Absolutely. I would have loved to see him start. It was quite a funny angle. It was my own fault. I was the one that told us to go and film outside a fucking abandoned shop. Did that Ralston cross not just sum up? I love his two comments back to back. I thought Bricky was good when he came on. Still a quality player. And then did that Ralston cross not just sum him up, especially the build-up? Listen, he's yeah. Listen, I won't go too far, but they're all trying. They're all trying. Kai, knowing Celtic, they'll this boil down to the Villa game. Thank you for the donation. Listen, the Villa game could be huge. We don't know yet. We need to see what happens at Young Boys, but both of these games are massive for us. Thank you for the donation, though. I appreciate it. Cup tied means he can't play in a cup game because he's already played in the cup for another team. So he played for Dundee before he signed for Celtic, so he can't play in this competition because he's already played for Dundee. I'm gonna wrap up the stream there because my pizza's gonna be freezing and I'm knackered, and we've got it's only 6 minutes earlier than usually the streams would go, but we'll probably do another couple of streams over the next week because I've been away. We've got video content coming out of the ears for the cup final, so don't worry, there's going to be a lot to talk about, and obviously the members only stuff as well. We'll hopefully be back to normal tomorrow as well for members only Q&A, so I'll see you guys there. Until next time though, lads, please take care of yourself. I appreciate your company tonight, and we'll get a bigger deep dive on this maybe tomorrow on the channel as well. So until then, take care, God bless, cheerio.